I don't know if Good morning, sir.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning, sir.
Morning. Is everybody joining in?
Sir, many of them have joined, sir.
Mm. But I don't see all the
They're still,
centers.
they are still joining.
Okay.
ಅವ್ರದ್ದು ಫಾರ್ಮ್ಯಾಟ್ ಕಳ್ಸಿಟ್ಟಿರ್ತೀರ
ಮೊಬೈಲ್ ಹೋಗ್ತಾ ಇಲ್ಲ. ಆಗ್ಲಿ ಆಗ್ಲಿ ಆಗ್ಲಿ.
ಫಾರ್ಮ್ಯಾಟ್ ಕಳ್ಸ್ಕೊಡ್ತೇನೆ.
All right. Maybe we can get started. I think let people join in.
Okay, sir.
All right. So today I had a few topics to discuss, and I'll be walking you through those topics, and I'll also be assigning some case studies, which all of you have to, all the centers have to work on and present sometimes next month whenever we are kind of meeting. So that's what it's going to be. So I don't know if all the students are going to be joining, or the faculties or the L2s or whoever it is, but like whenever I give the case studies, please note it down so that you are able to work on them accordingly. Okay. So the topic I wanted to cover today is extended reality. And extended reality is a relevant topic because typically, with all the information technology and all the subjects which you guys are learning, the application of extended reality is definitely going to be very, very critical, because that is where the world is moving towards, right? So in short, it's called as XR, and obviously the full form is extended reality, right? So I'll give you a example of from Accenture, and how Accenture is working on extended reality. I'll also share that link in the chat box sometime, so that you can save it and you can read more about the topic. You can do more of the Google search as well to find out more about extended reality, how the application of the different the concepts would be there, how you can make more in terms of how it is applied in the industry, etc., right? And and then based on those, you can work on your case studies, which I'm going to talk about sometimes in the class. I'm going to kind of assign that, right? So yeah, so hence this example is about Accenture and how Accenture is working on various extended reality concepts and taking it to the different industries and applying them in the different industries. So that's the whole concept. So I'll share my screen with you. Yeah, and I think you are able to see the screen now, right? You're able to see the screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Fine. Yeah. So if you see, this is a website, that is there on Accenture.com, and I'll share that link with you sometimes later, so that like you don't have to worry about it, right? So let's understand, what is an extended reality all about, right? It's one of the most interesting immersive technologies which helps users get a virtual experience in terms of the entire environment, in terms of how they would want to visualize, right? Something which is in a virtual world. So it brings about all the components of the virtual world together, right? Now, I'm sure a lot of you would have already are already familiar with the various virtual world concepts in terms of using the virtual world headsets or entering into an environment to see how or you play games, etc. So a lot of these opportunities are there. But nowadays what's happening is with the digital revolution, you are able to connect and build an environment which through the virtual world you are able to experience. Like earlier, if you had to probably, let's say, go for a client meeting, or if you had to go for, let's say, an industry visit, or if you had to go to a plant to see how things are working, etc., you would have to probably go physically. But now you can sit in your office or sit in your home, and through these virtual environment creation, you are able to actually see what is happening in a plant, or what's happening in a chemical factory, or what's happening in a banking, in a digital banking, etc. Right? So all through that programming and all through the experience part of it, and that is nothing but what is called as the extended reality, right? So basically, as the term says, like reality, and you are extending it. So if you see the headline here, it talks about virtual is the new reality. Yes, it is, because now through virtual you are able to experience everything, right? India's spend on extended reality technology is experiencing a significant growth because India is growing and India is having a very big digital revolution, right? This impact of these technologies, the augmented reality, the virtual reality, the mixed reality, is being felt across all industries. Like every industries are adopting this, right? However, it is also important to note, and just like any other technology or any other technology interventions or any other technology products that you develop or solutions that you develop, you have to be very careful in terms of the security. And I think we talked about this in the past classes as well. The security becomes very important. There are a lot of those cyber attacks or hackers and hacking, etc., which is there, right? So how typically when you build a solution around technology and integrate security is also something you need to keep in mind, right? And this is what the article also kind of talks about, right? Now, what are the different use cases, right? In terms of India, where does the Indian extended reality kind of really stands, right? So India's spend on extended reality is experiencing significant growth, yes. But what is also important is which are the sectors where the impact is being felt. Primarily healthcare, hospitality, education, and retail, right? Let's take an example of education, how a virtual reality or an extended reality is there in an education as an example. Think of all the various education, the new age education institutes that has come up. Let's take Byju's as an example, right? So Byju's has revolutionized the way education is delivered to the students. You have a complete package which you take from Byju's, and then you have an interactive classrooms. You have interactive videos. You have options wherein through the virtual reality space you are solving the problems of a physics or a maths or whatever it is, right? So there are users or students who are sitting different parts of the country. There is a faculty who is sitting in different parts of the country, and through this extended reality you are making the interaction much more meaningful, right? And it's not just probably a Zoom conversation or any other regular phone conversation. It is actually, you feel that when you enter into that environment, you are sitting in a classroom, you are listening on, you're seeing what kind of course is being taught, right? So that's the impact in the education industry. In the retail, this has also kind of taken a lot of examples, right? A lot of inputs. So typically this, somebody has to shut down, mute their computer. There's too much of background noise. Can you please mute the computer? There is too much of noise background. I don't know which center is this. Thank you. So in the retail, this is a very good. There are very. Can you please mute the background? Thank you. So in the retail, there are many use cases, right? Typically, the in-store experience, when traditionally when you walk into a retail store, if you want to buy a cloth or a clothing, etc., you would be choosing, you would be selecting which ones you would like to, and then you would be walking into a fitting room, where change room, where you would be trying it on and then seeing if the fitting is happening correctly or not, right? Now imagine a scenario where you are not walking into a retail store, you are sitting at home, and by sitting at home you are browsing the catalogs online, and then you are picking up the clothing which you would want to wear, and through technology and through virtual reality, right, you are able to pick and choose. You upload your photo, you choose a particular dress and drag it to where your photo is uploaded, and then you see how it fits you, right? So you get the entire experience of an on-store retail virtually. Now that's a very good use case, because typically it scales up a lot of opportunity for all the retailers, right? And one very good example of a retail organization, and you are all, I'm sure, familiar with this brand, H&M. I think you all are familiar with H&M. H&M was one of the first to try this in in the US, and then of course they have extended it to the rest of the global as well. So H&M came up with this concept of online shopping, where the users would be getting an opportunity to try things virtually, right? So that's one use case. And now of course, a lot of these companies are kind of adopting it, right? In India, I think one of the retail adoption for this is, the use case is like a lens cart. So if you go to lens cart, you are able to actually try out the lenses or try out the frames based on how it will look on your face, right? So typically what lens card does is it will ask you various questions in terms of what kind of a physique you have, or what kind of face cutting you have, etc., and stuff like that. So you will feed in all those details, and then Lenskart will create an image around yours, and then it will ask you to select a particular frame and put it over there. So in the virtual environment, you are then able to see if you want to buy a particular lens or a spectacle for your glasses, then how that will look like, right? So that's an example of the application of virtual reality in an industry, right? So yeah, so it's very important to kind of learn about these concepts, so that that while the technology is virtual reality, where are the applications happening and how are the applications happening. I think that's important. Okay. Now, if you see, browse through this page more, you will see that, the potential of this entire concept, right? Now, globally, extended reality is poised to be a 160 billion industry, dollars billion industry by 2023. So imagine by next year, this is going to be having a dollar 160 billion industry. Now that's the kind of powerful impact it will have in the industry and the world, right? In India, of course, the XR spending will exceed around 6.5 billion. So if you look at a comparison to the world, India is just less than even 10% of that, right? Around 1% or something, almost. So there is a huge potential, and that is something you should kind of look at when you are thinking of some sort of solutions around this, or if you're thinking of a career you want to take up. Maybe extended reality is a good area of application. Maybe all that you are learning in your courses, if you want to pick up a project or work on some of these, then probably virtual reality or extended reality is a good place to kind of be in, right? So you should start thinking on those lines as well, because if you see, the data shows the potential is huge, and that's important, and that's what I wanted to kind of share with you, right? Let's see how Indian companies are putting augmented reality and virtual reality to the use, right? So let's see what could are the use cases. So education, as we talked about, we talked about Byju's in one of the examples earlier, right? India's top education app Byju's recently acquired an educational gaming startup called Osmo 10, right? Now, Osmo has developed a gaming-based learning approach for children aged 4 to 11 years, exactly what we talked about, right? So how does it work? It's AR, is augmented reality device, mounts on an iPad, right? And enables the children to interact with their environment without touching the screen. That's the automation part of it. That's how you do it, right? So education is a big use case. Then let's look at real estate. Now, how is typically real estate helping consumers decide on whether this property is good to buy, or what kind of experience will I have in a real estate industry, right? So if you think of Lodha Group, which is one of the very established real estate in India, they are able to deliver projects on time. If most of the real estate are unable to deliver the projects on time, right? Typically, we are always anxious as to if we book a property, then what is the progress? When are we going to get the position, etc. So through extended reality, you are then able to see, even sitting at home, that okay, so much of construction is happening. Next phase of the construction, this is going to happen, right? So you don't have to go to the site physically every time to see how much the progress has been made, but it can be delivered to your inbox or experience through this concept, and that is important. So a lot of the real estate organizations are actually adopting it to interact with their customers, right? Then look at oil and gas, right? Hindustan Petroleum, which is a giant, HP, as we all call it, right? It provides an interactive and simulated environment to practice, in the refinery depots, helping address the challenge of traditional training methods. Now, typically, oil and gas kind of companies requires a lot of training and coaching for its workforce. Now, traditionally, people would be going to the offices, understanding what the courses are, getting the hands-on training in the plants, in the refinery, etc. But through extended reality, you are able to deliver that at scale, simulating the environment, creating that environment for yourself, right? And then that helps to learn fast, or it helps to have more accurate kind of training, because sometimes in the physical training you may not get that accuracy, but then in through a digital training you are able to have much more use cases, much more visuals, much more interactions, etc., right? So, and of course it saves a lot of cost, because this is more scalable, right? So that's another use case that in India it is happening. Retail, as we talked about, right? Here is an example of an urban ladder, but typically, we talked about H&M, we talked about the lens cart, etc., right? So there are multiple such examples that you can find out, and you can read them more about it, right? Infrastructure, right? Now, typically, one of the biggest challenges of infrastructure is, say, for example, there's a flyover construction happening, or there's a metro rail construction happening, or there is a road construction happening. So the safety of the laborers at the construction site is very critical. One needs to be educated, right? The training costs, of teaching the laborers or the workforce how it is going to be taken up during the construction is high, usually. But through extended reality, the training is delivered in a much more interactive manner. So it helps reduces the cost. Through extended reality, you have a lot of knowledge sharing that happens, like the do's and the don'ts, and the different visuals talks about if you, for example, are working on a flyover construction, and if the pillar that you are constructing, there is an angle which is slightly tilted, then that can cause havoc, that can cause probably a malfunctioning, right? Or for example, where should you place the crane to pull the pillar up and the slabs on them, right? So through simulation, through extended reality, even before the workers actually go on site to work, they are well trained, and that's helpful. That's very helpful, right? So that's another use case in the infrastructure sector. And then you have hospitality, of course, right? Hospitality typically would mean your the hotels industry, your travel industry, etc., right? So in terms of the booking, when you want to travel, when you want to reserve a room, or when to choose an hotel, um, even before you do that, if you're getting an extended reality solution, so you're able to see how that room is going to be. You're going to see what are the features that property has, swimming pool or a room or a dining room, or what the playground. You will be able to see all those things and experience it in a virtual world before you actually decide, okay, if I know this is a good place for me to go and book and a vacation, and hence I would be able to, right? So before even making that booking, you are able to see and experience that. So that's the use case of in a hospitality industry, right? Moving on, you know as the sentence here says, this extended reality use cases are just the tip of opportunity, right? There's so much to be done. So if you're thinking of a business, or if you're thinking of a value addition, or if you're thinking of what kind of careers you may want to make, so areas around this, or knowledge or skill development around this, could be critical, right? And you may ask me the question, what kind of skills are required to do this? So all that we have been talking about in the last, let's say, 1 month, all the topics in terms of cloud or IoT or data, everything together are used in these concepts. Everything is required, right? Because the data, in this case, the storage happens in the cloud. The IoT is it's connected, through the connected devices. You can have various extended reality devices, right? It could be your iPad, it could be your phone, or it could be even your laptop. Also, it could be your virtual reality headsets, right? It could be anything. So that's the IoT part of it. And there's so much of data that churns out. So obviously, your machine learning and your AI becomes important over there, right? So think about the use cases where these are helpful, right? And then of course, you have, as we said, what are the basically the features, right? Allows access to sensitive data. I think what we should be definitely careful about is XR adds more complexity to data driven world of business, right? So we need to be very careful in terms of how we are accessing the data. um, Fake experiences, while we say that extended reality is helping with experience creation, but it should not be fake, it should be real. So if you are an organization, if you want to really show your users the experience, it should be a real-time experience. It should not be like, something which is something which is not real, right? You take that example, create a world of experience, and then the users would understand that, yes, like, while this is a virtual world, in reality, when I go there in person, this is what, like, I'll be seeing, right? So experience creation is very important, right? Um, Remembering the prevention of cyber attacks, prevention of security, I mean, the implementation of security, these are obviously very important, right? So hence the security aspect of things are really kind of an important, right? So in terms of this section talks about, what are the actions that, businesses and policymakers in India should do to facilitate this, right? So one is obviously bringing in the experts, and you can be the experts tomorrow, because, if you are studying certain courses on on the topics, then tomorrow maybe you will be the expert, and that's the opportunity for you in your career, right? Accelerate wider adoption with the right infrastructure, that is for the government and the private sector players to work together to ensure that the ecosystem or the infrastructure is provided, the internet, the other facilities, right? The say, for example, if 5G is kind of, going live, then perhaps the it's going to change the entire, ecosystem around, how internet works altogether, right? So that's the infrastructure part of it, right? And of course, incentivize innovation. So encouraging innovation, as we are talking in this class, or as you are studying more, I think you all should feel encouraged to take projects up. You all should feel that, you can do something creative in this like an aspect, right? So that's important. Now that is the important part of, how this should be taken care of, right? So I will pause here for some time. Let's hear some questions, on this, so that, we can talk more about it. And in the meanwhile, in the chat, I will be sharing this link, which you all can read. And I would request all the students and the L2s and all the faculties to save this link, so that later when you are working with the team, you are able to go through this and guide them accordingly, right? So, okay.
Hello, sir. This is
Yes.
Sriram Kamath from Justin Kotek Kundapura.
Yes, Shriram. Yeah.
So, sir, you were talking about extended reality in real estate with the example of Rosa Group.
Yeah.
Yeah, sir. Is it like the Google 360 view? Is it similar to that, like providing the customers the real-time photos or the experience, like in the construction? How much is the construction ongoing?
Yeah. So Google 360 is a basic version of this, right? It's a simple basic version, but you can use the concepts of a Google 360, and if you are building an even more bigger solution, that becomes more friendly. So Google 360 is typically something that was created to quick and easy access, just to let the users get some sort of a understanding or a feeling. And yes, it is an example, but it's a basic example. Now let's say, for example, you the let's say any real estate player, they are creating a complete environment altogether, right? Where you are not only seeing the pictures, but you are actually probably being able to interact. Maybe there's a virtual avatar. You can talk to that virtual avatar, right? Or maybe there is a video that is embedded. You can see, you can click on it and see, what the concept is all about. Maybe if you are wearing the virtual headset, you can actually walk through the campus, where the construction is happening, or where the roads are getting made, or where the houses are getting built, etc., right? So that becomes much more what we call as the immersive experience, right? The terminology used is immersive experience, right?
So, are you talking about like if we want to take an apartment in the Lola group, we just have to log into their website or something, and we will be like having a mission, and there will be like virtual guide for us.
Yes.
Who will take on our tour for the entire house. She will they will explain about the all the things without taking us like physically. They will doing all those things in virtually.
Yes.
It will be convenient for the users.
Yes, correct. Convenient for the users, and also the experience part of for the users, right?
Yeah.
A lot of things in the virtual world, you can create that lovely experience for the user, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and it is not only through the website, it could be maybe like, some sort of an app, maybe
Yeah.
like, you download that app, etc. Right? See, okay, I'll give you another example. So a lot of times when you, let's say, um, and I'm sure a lot of us, like, we subscribe to newspapers, right? At home, we read newspapers, right? So this car manufacturers, I mean, all the cars, like in the Hyundai and Marutis of the world and the Ford, etc. Whenever something new is launched, they have a one-page, full-page advertisement on a newspaper, right?
Yes.
Below, then usually they will have a QR code.
Yeah.
And if you're using your phone, you just scan the QR code, right?
We can view the 360 model of that car.
Correct. And also, if you are using augmented reality, which is, by the way, a part of the extended reality, right?
We can take
You
the
can,
test drive or something.
yes, you can take the test drive. You can actually, like, place your phone in a way where you will find in your room the car is present.
Yeah.
Right now, that, imagine, like, how much excited, like, we get when we see this, right? So say, for example, you want to buy a big car. I mean, and obviously buying a car is everybody's aspiration. We all like to, right? So we like to experience it, right? So if thinking, like, even before going to the showroom, you want to feel like the how the interiors are, or if you are sitting in the driver's wheel, like, how this will look like, right? So many things are there. So through augmented reality, sitting in your home and through your app itself, you can do it. You will feel as if the card is right in your home, like, you're sitting on the bed, but your card is there in the in front of you, right? So
Yes.
that's the experience of extended reality.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Right. More questions? Others? Other centers?
Uh, Hello, sir. I'm Prerna Bhavi from Shark Computers. What is the difference between augmented reality and virtual reality?
Okay. Augmented reality. Okay. I'll first talk about virtual reality, right? Now, virtual reality is a lesser version of augmented reality. Virtual reality is more simple in the sense that you are just seeing the experience maybe through a headset. Like for example, there are a lot of virtual reality headsets that you get, right? Like the Microsoft has them, Facebook has them. So you can buy those headsets, and in the gaming parlors you will see, like, if you are playing something, you have the headsets, you wear that headset, and then you realize, okay, either you're playing a game or you're walking through, etc., etc., and so. But it is all in that environment of the headset, right? Augmented reality is one step advanced than that. Augmented reality is like, you need not even wear the headsets. As I said, an example of the car, like, augmented reality means, like, you're bringing the reality in front of you right there, right? You feel
Yes,
as
yes,
if,
sir.
like, you are just by kind of, using an app on your phone, you are actually able to see that something is right in front of you, like right there, right? That's one level above your experience. So virtual reality typically will be in the virtual world. You program certain things, like, and you are able to see only that. But in augmented reality, you are able to move around as well. So imagine the example of the car again, right? Let's say you are sitting in your drawing room, and you are using the phone like this, and you are seeing the car right in the drawing room. So you move around, the car also moves along with you, because then you are augmenting that experience yourself. That's why it is called augmented reality.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Yep.
Sir, one more question.
Yeah.
Sir, like augmented reality, are we using holograms or something?
Yeah. Absolutely. Hologram is used. Like, you're typically, like, the Microsoft has this HoloLens, right? So that's one of the very key, like, devices, or that's something which, like, really facilitates this. So absolutely.
Thank you, sir.
Right. More questions? Okay, I can see some in the chat room. What are the major challenge faced by companies in developing XR? Okay. So this is from Asma in Chirag Infotech. The question is, so the biggest challenge, I would say, is, like, right now, the infrastructure. If you don't have the infrastructure, then typically, like, developing, you may have a great concept, but if you don't have the support, if you don't have the infrastructure, then it becomes a problem. And when I say infrastructure, I mean things like internet, things like, your connectivity, etc., etc., right? Second is, like, companies, while they are warming up to the idea, they are still not completely warmed up. They are still lot of traditional stuff that is happening. So companies need to move fast or make that shift so that they adopt the digital world much more faster, much more quicker, right? So I think that's the second challenge which companies face. Third is the talent, right? Right people with the right skill sets. That's the one of the biggest challenges. I as a company, I may want to be really progressive. I would want to encourage that, yes, we should be doing something around extended reality, etc. But I need the right people. Do I have the right people? I think that's a challenge most companies face, and hence I am asking all of you that if you are taking up the courses and if you are learning, then make sure that you learn it so well that companies, when they hire you, you are able to deliver and you are able to make that impact, right? So talent is a very important aspect of things, right? So yeah, so primarily these are the things, and then of course overall in a country, the government policies, how flexible they are, your data privacy rules and regulations, your IT rules and regulations, how much they will encourage you as a country as a whole to adopt these digital technologies. All these also are important to for a company to decide how easy or difficult it is for them to go ahead with it, right? So hopefully this answers your question, Azma. Okay, thank you. You have mentioned in the chat, yes. Okay, thank you very much. All right, good questions. More questions? More questions? Okay, if there are no questions, so then let me give you all the case study, right? And I would request the students who are present and also the faculties and L2s and Kionics team to please note it down, because all the groups, all the centers have to work on this, right? And present in the next, let's say, for example, 2 weeks time or something, next month, whenever we are meeting and when we are having the classes, right? So I have shared the information in the chat around, and I've given that link, right, about extended. And if you search more, on the net, you will find many such examples and many such learnings, etc. Right? So your knowledge is going to be there. That should not be a challenge. The case study is this: each institute needs to pick up one industry, right, and come up with a solution of extended reality. How you will develop a solution, how you would create a business case, how you would create a commercialization plan for this, right? And how will you market it? These are the 4 questions, right? One, first, pick up the use case in an industry where you would want to build a solution. So what solution will you build? What is the use case? Once you have built the solution, how would you make it a business viable product? So what is the business definition, or what's the business sense that you're bringing in? Third is, how are you going to measure the success? And fourth is, how are you going to market it? Or rather, third is how you're going to market it. Fourth is how you're going to measure the success, right? Is this clear? The questions?
Yes, sir. Clear.
Yeah. So you can choose any industry. There are multiple industry and the use cases, right? And then you can work on this presentation in this sequence. And we already had a presentation in the past, and we talked about how a presentation should be made, what are the different components, etc. So that's going to be important, right? So Raichu tells me can you repeat it, sir? Yes, I can repeat it. So the first, okay, I'll type it in the chat as well. First is choose an industry where you have an use case of XR, right? Second, build a solution around it. Third, come up with a business value proposition. Basically, that means like build a business case for it. Fourth is how will you market it, and fifth is how will you measure success. I've repeated and I have also mentioned in the chat group so that everybody has it. Please note it down. And this is how you would be making the presentation. Right?
Sir, I have a question.
Yes,
Like last time we had few groups in the centers. So can we go forward with the same teams and
Same thing. Same thing.
yes, sir. That's it. Thank you.
Same thing. In fact, Sajane, that's a good point because that will also get the teams to work together.
Yes, sir. That's why.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. So the same teams can present, same teams can work accordingly. And we will also see how the teams are doing the things differently from the previous times, right? Because there would be some learnings, there were some feedbacks, etc., etc. So I think it's a good idea.
Yes, sir. That's right. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, Sajana. Yeah. All right. Okay. So now let's say, now we have talked about extended reality and we have given the case study. I will like to talk something about a little bit of how technology marketing happens, right? And the reason is because in the case study you saw that one of the points was how would you market it? What's the business impact for it, right? So I will tell you how typically a marketing happens in a technology world. How would you communicate that? How would you promote that? What are the different channels, etc.? I think that would be helpful, right? So let's talk about the virtual reality or the virtual events that happens, right? Now, while you may say that okay, things like Zoom or Microsoft Teams or Google is also a virtual environment. So are these virtual platforms for events? Are they virtual events platforms? So the answer is no, these are not virtual events platforms. These are virtual meeting rooms. What we are, for example, what we are doing right now, we all are speaking and we have logged into the Zoom. Zoom is an app which is basically helping to facilitate a meeting. So it's a virtual meeting, right? We are just interacting one-on-one. That's about it, right? Now imagine an event, how an event is typically done, right? Think of a physical event. When you go to a physical event, typically, you will have a lot of experiences that's available, right? What kind of experiences? You walk in, there is a booth, then you register, and you get to go to the different meeting rooms, etc., and stuff like that, right? Now in a virtual world, how do you bring that in is the question that we would need to answer. And then we would realize that how a physical experience of an event can be moved to a virtual event, right? That's more of a virtual event, whereas just a Zoom or a Microsoft, etc., are just meeting rooms. Now you can integrate a meeting room within a virtual event. That is possible. That is one component of it, correct? But the overall experience of how you typically experience how when you would be going to a meeting physically, I think that is something you would need to bring it to a virtual environment, right? How do you do that? There are several virtual event marketing organizations, companies, right? Let's say, for example, like an On24. It's a global, virtual company. Then you have a lot of the local ones, right? You have your even the Zooms of the world are also kind of creating some virtual event, new technologies they're bringing in, which is one of the events, right? Then you have what is called a swap card. A swap card is a virtual event platform which you can use. Then you have Six Connects. This is another virtual event platforms you can use. So if you search in Google about what are the various virtual events platforms and companies, you will find a list of them kind of coming through, right? But Let's take an example today of how, one of the proposals that was shared with Accenture. And again, this is a real-time use case of how Accenture would be planning a virtual event, right? How and I'll share with you some screenshots, and I'll share with you some slides, etc., which you will see that, how typically the concept is formed, and then in a real time, how does it look like, right, in a virtual event, right? So I'll probably share. So let me share my screen right now and talk about, an example from On24, right? So On24 is a global virtual events platforms provider, and they're one of the best that you can work with, right? So in 2020, when the COVID and the pandemic was happening, and everybody was moving more towards the virtual world, so On24 and Accenture partnered with a proposition as to how do we turn your physical events into a digital experience. That's the key. If you look at the sentence, right? And then we'll see how the what they're proposing. Now, physical events are a marketing staple. What does it mean? Events in a marketing is very critical. Any kind of event, right? And people prefer in-person events, of course, because that's the human interaction part of it, right? But what else can you do? You can have webinars, you can have case studies, you can have content syndication. So these are the various different types of interactions that that helps you to generate demand, right? This slide here talks about different ways in which you can, as an organization, you can generate demand. And if you see, events are at the top. So obviously this means that events becomes a very critical aspect. Now, whether it's a physical event or whether it's a virtual event is what we need to see. Typically, in-person events are people definitely like to go and visit, but then in the world today, where there is so much of presence of virtual, how do you then collaborate and create the experience in the virtual world becomes important, right? So keeping events as a top priority. How does typically the virtual events will work, right? What are the possibilities that's there? So think of in a regular event, what would you see? You would have a speaker, you would have a stage, you would have topics, right? You will have a breakout room where you would go and interact. You will have some some time slots, like for example 9 to 9:30, this is what is going to be, 9:30 to 10, this is what is going to be. So a schedule, right? So can all of these be replicated in a virtual world? Yes, the answer is yes. How? If you see on the right hand side, it is nothing but how do you log into a virtual event? You are just given a login and a password based on your registration, and that entire environment is created where you feel that yes, you have logged into an Accenture event, or you have logged into an IBM's event, or you have logged into, let's say, a Google event, etc. Right? That's the world for you, right? So what are the things possible? You have sessions that are live. A host can be there who is going to be doing the live sessions. You have interactive Q&A, right? For example, if the host is speaking or asking questions, or somebody from the audience is asking questions, then how through an online platform you are able to answer that, right? And that is where solutions like also additional solutions like a Zoom, etc., can be integrated to these platforms, so that the interaction part happens in through that meeting room, but the overall environment is much more bigger, right? That's what On24 provides, right? Flexible style of presentation. So in a physical event, typically you would use the slides. You will change, you will show something on the big screen. There are audiences who will be wanting to see them. Even in the virtual world, it is absolutely possible, but all you need to do is upload your slides in advance and then keep on navigating them and changing and talking through. So on one side, you will see the person who is talking, right? Over here, let's say, for example, extreme right side, you will see the person who is talking, right? Imagine the person to be on the stage. And the other side, it is the users who have logged in, and we are seeing the person talking. And then if you want to ask some questions, we can do that. If the person wants to interact and give some demo, the person can do that, right? So this is possible. And this is how also it looks like when you first log in. And this is an example of how SAP, the organization, ran a virtual event with On24. This is how the environment was built, right? So again, think of in a physical event when you walk in to a conference or a seminar room, what are the few things you see? You see a lobby, you see a registration booth, you see an indication as to which hall the meeting is going to happen or which room the meeting is going to happen, etc., right? If you create the same environment in a virtual world, you see, like, there's a resource center, you see there is a presentations, you see there is a like a spotlight, or you see a registration, etc., or a video playing. So this entire thing can be replicated online, right? That's bringing the physical events virtual, right? Another example of how Salesforce did it, right? So typically Salesforce started conducting a lot of these virtual events with On24, okay? And then they found that, like, typically, users started to embrace it. Users started to really, like it in terms of, how it made things much more easier, right? So the Salesforce Expo, which is a big event for Salesforce, every year they have it. They did it virtually with On24. That's another industry kind of a use case, right? Again, as I said, the advantages, you can build your own agenda with online audiences, just like, what is required for an event, right? What is the agenda that you would be having, and what are the different features that are kind of, available, right? And this is something which was customized for Accenture, because we Accenture wanted to see that, what are the different features available when you want to create an experience, what are the various features that is available, right? Overall design. So this is, let's say, for example, if you see a replication of an online or of an offline, event into an online. See the environment in the background. Imagine this to be an event symposium. In a regular time, if you walk into a conference room, or if you walk into a large, symposium, this is how you would see. It's an open air, right? And then there are different, places. How do you replicate that into online? You have an auditorium, you have a lounge, like exactly how it would be when you are going to and attending some event in some places. Okay, so that could be, so this is one feature which is kind of available. Then you have, your room experience. So for example, while the previous one, like this one, was an experience of, the external, and let's say as an user I am entering the space. Once I have entered, what do I see? I see rooms, I see places where, I can sit and interact, correct? In the virtual world, how would you do that? In the virtual world, this is an environment of a room. This is how the room looks like. Very similar to a real-time room, right? But you can interact, you can click on any one of these, module 1, module 2, etc., and you can interact and you can see. Because in a virtual world, you are sitting in your room and actually interacting with this. In a real world, you would be probably going there and doing it yourself, right? So how are you going to replicate that in the virtual world? I think you can do that, right? Typically, this is done through the design templates. There are various design templates, and if somebody is doing a design, kind of a course, they would know how to typically design it, right? But there are ready-made templates that are available here, which can be used to work on this. This is an example of an Oracle, what they did. They did an event with, On24, wherein, again, if you see, this is the example of a lobby. When somebody enters a lobby, right? And then when somebody enters a lobby, what are the various things they see? You have and then they, in the virtual world, they can click on each one of them and kind of go through, right? In the real world, physical event, all these would be remaining, but you as a person would be walking in. You would be meeting or shaking hands, right? Here, you are clicking with a mouse, and maybe we talked about extended reality earlier in the class. Think of, if this is the basic environment, if you're also bringing in extended reality here, or a virtual reality here in this virtual event, you can maybe create an avatar. Maybe this person can be an avatar who greets you the moment you log in to your system and to the event.
Soumyajit, this is Sarit Kumar here.
Yes.
So this Oracle example which you are giving, it is under what head? Are they able to get it? I am also one of them in Gulbarga today. I'm in Gulbarga. So are the students under what head we are doing this?
we are doing
project
we are we are doing this under the head of topics. Today's topic is virtual reality.
Okay, so maybe I joined just now. Thank you very much. So,
Yeah.
thank
So so before you joined, we talked about examples of extended reality, virtual reality, etc.
Oh,
And
wonderful.
and now we are talking about how this can be used for virtual events.
Wonderful, wonderful. So I hope the students are getting it.
Yeah, I think they are getting it because there were some
Yes,
lovely
they are not
questions
getting
earlier.
it. Always write in the chat box.
Yes,
So that
yeah,
we can answer. Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you, Soumyajit. Carry on. Sorry.
yeah.
Thank you.
Right. So again, just talking about imagine now we in the earlier in the class we talked about extended reality. So over here, if we are able to use that use case additionally, right? So let's say, for example, this person that you see here, you can actually make this person a virtual avatar. When you log in, he greets you. On the right hand side, you see a networking lounge, right? You can have some avatars created which is moving. Here you see still images, but you can create dynamic images, right? And which are kind of moving. So which means it gives you a more of a real-time feel of whether how you are interacting with them, right? So you can create, see again, the possibilities are endless. You can create the learnings from one to the other. That's important, right? That's important to note, right? So this is an example of an Oracle. How would you typically have a breakout room and a knowledge center? And again, if you see this, images here, these are typically if you actually walk into an event, you will be able to see how people are sitting in the sofa or how they are going and kind of interacting with somebody, or there could be some in a real physical event. The knowledge centers would typically have books and magazines and some pamphlets, etc., which you can probably pick up and read and stuff. In the virtual world, you can just upload the relevant content over there, like whatever you would want the users to go through or whatever you would want the users to interact with, right? So that becomes my knowledge center, where I, as a user, I come, I click on each one of these topics, I get the details, and then I kind of learn, and that's my experience part of it, right? On the right hand side you see a meeting room kind of a thing. So maybe let's say during the event, a virtual event, there are two people who want to talk. There are facilities through which there are search facilities or there are chat facilities through which you can ping each other and say, hey, you know what, at this point in time, can we come to the talent acquisition center? Can we come to the breakout room and can we talk with each other? In a real world, you would probably walk into the person and both of you will together sit on the sofa and talk. But in the virtual world, in a similar environment, you can chat or you can do a video call in that entire room, and that becomes my experience part of it, right? So I was seeing the similarity and how you are trying to we are trying to bring in things together. So this is important, right? And then again, as I said, live webcam, as I said, right? How would you chat with a person? You can use the inbuilt you can use the webcam which is there on your laptop, etc., and then link it and integrate it with the On24 platform. So whenever, and if you see, this is how the chat is going. How is everybody doing today? Today's topic is etc., etc. And then this person is kind of answering, and then you are also asking questions and interacting, right? So you can bring this feature into the breakout rooms, etc., and then interact just you would do in a physical world, right? And of course, what are the other features? You have a social networking, you have blogs, you have groups, one-on-one chat, etc. All these which is possible in a physical environment. When you go to an event, it's possible online as well. So when you go to the physical environment, you interact, you network, right? On the online version, that will be a more of a social networking. You chat during a physical event. So in online version, probably you can chat with multiple people, right? During the event, attendees can talk amongst each other, right? So I think those are all important ones, right? You can gamify, you can make some things very interactive. Sometimes events can be boring, long sessions, or people not getting the time to relax, right? You can make certain things interaction interesting as well. Maybe you can say oh, 9:30 to 10:15 is a relaxed time, please go visit and understand and play more or something. And through this gamification, you may have some interesting quizzes, Or you may say, like, if you are able to answer 5 questions, you will be given a prize, right? So you can build those gamification kind of thing. So if you think of an normal, regular physical event, you have these options as well, wherein, like, you walk out, take a break and do some gaming, or you take a photo, there is a photo booth, etc., etc., and all those kind of things, right? So here also you can integrate all of them in a virtual world. The possibilities again are kind of endless, right? Multiple languages, of course, because global companies are present across different regions, so multiple languages is important, but like primary languages, of course, English, and that is possible. um, very important in terms of technology and how the experience is. Like, whatever platforms you are using should be ideally compatible across all, whether it's a mobile or it's a tablet or it's a laptop, right? So the way these, things are created should be having a seamless experience across all the devices. Very important to keep in mind, right? And also, on 24 says no app required. So you don't have to download or install any app. It is real time. Now that's also something which, like, users like, because otherwise users will think, oh, again I have to download some app, right? A lot of times, like, we are not comfortable with that. So this also kind of helps you with that as well, right? Yeah, and that's what it is. So was an example of, like, how the virtual events happen, right? And we took an example of Accenture, we took an example of an Oracle and SAP, and you saw that, like, all these companies are kind of using virtual events a lot, right? How they are using it, of course, the event content is going to be different, because obviously each one of them has a different topic and an agenda, but the basic infrastructure of, like, how you use a platform, an events platform, remains the same. And then you go about customizing further, whatever you need. However, like, you want to keep the event very simple, then it is fine. You want to add on some more features to it, then that is possible. But anything and everything that you are doing on a physical like an event is possible on a virtual world as well, right? And that's what I wanted you all to understand, and hence I shared this example. So I open up for some questions now.
Hello, sir.
Yeah.
Sriram. So, like, in the virtual events, it can be more interactive compared to the physical events, right, sir? Like, for in the physical events, there might be one person who is welcoming the persons who are attending the session. But in the virtual event, it can be like for n number of users, it can be personalized for each user. So each user can get an avatar who is inviting them, and they can have their own. Like in a physical events, there might be half an hour of time. There can be 5 or 10 entertainment events or something. But in the virtual event, each user can get the experience. So in the physical events, there might be not enough of time, but compared with the virtual, n number of users can interact at the same time, and there can be like we can extend the infrastructure. So we don't need a large infrastructure. We can just use the templates which are already built, and we can extend it also. So according to our users.
Yes. Right? Yes. Very true. Very true. And honestly, you bring a very interesting point, right? You talked about the avatars. Like, either the avatar can be a standard avatar, right? Or you can go one step further to give the users an option as to which avatar would you choose at the very beginning itself, when you are kind of logging in, right? And then that becomes my personalized experience. So to your question, is it possible? It is possible. Whether I want to do it or not is a different question, but it is possible, right? Second is, like, in a physical event, yes, you are absolutely correct. Like, you have some restricted times, and by that time you may want to come out and interact, etc. But in a virtual event, you, like, while there will be some time slots given to you, a breakout time, etc., but you can still in parallel probably look at something which may be of interest to you, right? Maybe, like, in the knowledge center, there is a very important, like, information around some topics. You can download the topic and save it. You can read about it later. So you can at least, like, utilize your time much more effectively. That is for sure, right? In terms of the interactivity, to be honest, like, while yes, virtual events provides all interaction possible, but I also feel that, like, in-person interactivity is always good also, right? Because ultimately we are human beings and we may want to kind of meet person to person. So in terms of the interactivity, to your question, whether it is possible, but whether we would want to do it or what is better, virtual versus physical, I think that's an individual's choice. Like there is no one single answer to that, right? But otherwise, all that you mentioned are definitely possibilities. And I really like the way you're thinking, because this is how we all should think. If you are thinking digital, we need to push ourselves to think beyond the normal. We need to push ourselves to think like, what could be more innovative way of kind of doing it, right? And virtual events definitely is one of the ways of doing it.
It also can provide a special experience for the users.
Yeah.
Will be more like they will be connected with the company. It's
Yeah.
they will get a new experience, whole new experience, which they have not experienced before.
Yeah.
It will be a plus point for the company.
Absolutely. See, events in general, whether it is a virtual or physical, right? Even if you just look at events, event is all about experience. The concept of events in marketing is about providing the best and a wow experience to the users, whatever those events are, small, big, large, medium, whatever, right? Similarly, in a virtual environment also, experience becomes important, because ultimately virtual events are nothing but events, right? So how you are able to bring that experience to the users would be helpful. And in virtual, you actually have a lot of creativity which you can do, because you are working with a lot of technologies, right? So technology, the possibilities are endless, right? As long as you are able to bring together the technologies and the use cases and create that, you can absolutely be creative. There is no one stopping you from not being creative, right? So the possibilities are endless for sure.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Other questions?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Myself, Anusha from Vaishali Computers.
Yes.
I have one question. In which industries is VR mostly applied?
VR.
Yes, sir.
VR or virtual events? Which one are you talking about?
Reality.
Oh, okay. The first topic which you talked in the morning.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. See, VR is, as we talked about in the class as well, lot of industries are using it, right? Be it a real estate, be it a banking, be it your media entertainment, a lot of industries are using it. But in general, I would say retail uses it quite a lot, right? Your media entertainment uses it quite a lot, because obviously media entertainment, but the nature of the business is such that you can for example, gaming, right? So obviously you will need to use those VR as a concept, right? And again, companies like real estate, then automobiles, right? These are the ones who are using it quite a lot, because see, anything where users require an experience, anything where users requires something that they would want to really immerse themselves, touch and feel. Well, touch and feel is not possible in a virtual world, but in real world it is possible. So think of in a real world, wherever users are looking at some experience of a touch and feel, those are the use cases which you are bringing in virtually in the industries and giving them the experience. Those are the industries which work very well. So these are a few of the industries where virtual reality is really doing well.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, very good questions. I would love to hear more questions. Other centers? Hubli, Dharwad, Raichur, Kavita Computers. Any other questions? SH Systems.
So,
Mm-hmm.
sir, in sales, how you can use this technology, sir?
Which one? Which technology? The virtual reality?
Yes, sir. In sales.
Yeah. So I will give you an example of real estate, right? Let's say, for example, you are in a real estate sales. How would you typically encourage your customers or wow your customers through virtual reality. You create a package where the customer is able to see and visualize and experience the real world sitting at his home, right? And then once he does that, you explain to him or her saying that, sir or ma'am, this is what you saw. Now let's talk about our project. Let's talk about our possibilities. Let's talk about, like, how much you need to invest, what are the facilities available, because by the time the person would have seen all those things in the virtual world, right, the person would also be asking you more questions which is more relevant. They would say, you know what, oh, when I was looking in the virtual reality, I saw that, like, you are offering so many square feet of lawn. Is it possible, or, like, where is the lawn going to be when I'm building the house, right? So then as a salesperson, you would be able to explain that this is where the lawn is going to be, that this is how the structures are going to be. There are going to be 5 towers, there are going to be 10 towers, and in front of each there's going to be a specific area of curated lawns or gardens, right? So you will be able to explain that. And then when you are explaining that, because the person has already seen that in through the experience, the person will be able to relate that, yes, these are the towers, this is where, like, it's going to be. So the conversation of a salesperson becomes very, like, helpful if you are able to already, like, share this information and make the people go through that experience. That's how the application of it's going to be in the sales.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, and I've just given a real estate example. It could be any industry. It could be a retail, for all that you know. It could be, like, your education. It could be anything.
Okay, sir.
Typically, I'll give you another example. So I'm sure you all watch television and you all watch internet. You all interact in the internet, etc. You would have seen a lot of Byju's ads, right? Where the 30-second ads talks about, like, what exactly is Byju going to do? How is the teaching going to happen? Correct. Now, by looking at that ad, you know that, okay, there is something around virtual reality that Byju is going to offer if we sign up for them with them in terms of education. Correct. Then you are curious, you walk in and reach out to the sales team as to tell us, like, more. And then sales team gives you, let's say, for example, a 5 minutes or 10 minutes demo of a virtual reality, saying that, you please interact yourself and see, like, how it is going to be for the students. You do that, you yourself get that experience, and you are comfortable saying that, hey, this is great, hence I can buy it for my child, or hence I can recommend this to any student. Correct. Then it becomes very easy for the salesperson to sell you, because he has already given you that experience. So providing that experience, like, to the users from a sales team is probably the biggest winning factor. And that is where also sales and marketing work hand in hand together. Right? Okay, more questions? More questions around this virtual events?
Hello,
Okay.
sir.
Yeah, go ahead.
This is Apurva from Contact Harvard.
Mm-hmm.
Sir, all we have seen a virtual realities around us, but still more, if there is any challenges, what could be it, sir?
See,
Any challenges?
challenges will be there, as I said, like, I think the biggest important requirement is internet and bandwidth, right? So let's say now that, we are talking about 5G, a lot of these problems are going to be solved. Number one. Number two is, like, the adoption. Like, while people, like, while virtual and digital has its advantages, people need to adopt it also. Like, in India, for example, how many, like, cities in the country actually has adopted digital? Like, maybe the metros, or maybe the tier 1 cities or tier 2 cities, right? So that adoption and that coaching and that education, I think that's going to be important as well. How do you typically, like, encourage people to start using this more, right? So these are the few of the challenges which exists currently. But I think the biggest challenge is probably the infrastructure, which is more related to the internet and the bandwidth. If that is solved, a lot of these things are going to be solved even faster. And we all are hoping that 5G is actually going to solve that problem, because that's what the value proposition is for a 5G.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. More questions? Okay. If there are no questions, then I will give you the second case study. The first case study I've already given you earlier in the morning, right? I will give you the second case study, which again, the same teams, what you're working on, can work on. And then we can start, you can start presenting and we will be having those discussions, right? This case study is going to be around virtual events, like very specifically virtual events, right? The question is this: you choose an industry where you would want to run a virtual event to attract clients and business, right? Let me repeat. You choose an industry where you would want to run a virtual event to attract clients and business. How would you do it? What is going to be your overall events plan? And how would you measure success? How would you measure experience? How would you provide that experience, right? So I'll put it in the chat as well, so that you can all see. So I'll start typing right now. Project number 2. Choose an industry where you will be using virtual events to attract clients and business. How will you plan the event? What would be your approach? Keeping in mind this is only a virtual event and not a physical event. What will be the agenda? What kind of experience would you provide to the users through the virtual event? How will you measure success? Clear? This is project number 2. Is that fine? Any questions on this? Any questions on the questions which I shared as a part of the project?
No, sir.
Okay, all right, good. If there are no questions, then we can move on to the next topic, right? I wanted to talk to you a little bit about content marketing, right? So and I'm sure all of you know that content is the most important thing in terms of marketing, because if you don't have content, then what will you market, right? That's the question. So I wanted to talk about content marketing and explain that how typically, what is content marketing, how typically content marketing is done, and then of course I'll give you another use case, real-time example of Accenture in India, how they are doing it, so that at any point in time you want to do a research or you want to kind of find out more, you can always Google and you can get this information. This is real time. This is existing right now in the industry as well, in terms of how things are done, right? So content marketing in very simple language is just the communications part of your marketing overall. Now, marketing as a function has two parts. One is like, marketing, and secondly is the how do you communicate that? That is the communication. So that's why always marketing is called together as marketing plus comms, M plus C, right? The communication part of the marketing is nothing but like, how are you taking the content and marketing it? Now, content can have different forms, right? It can have, let's say, text, which is a blog. It can have a website text, which is again a text version, right? It can be a video. It can be a social media, like, infographic. It can be a social media, like, an image, right? It can be, let's say, like, your podcasts, right? A lot of times, like, Spotify's of the world is all about podcasts, right? It can be an audio book, like, which is a little different from podcast. That, like, audio book is something, for example, that Amazon has Audible, right? Audible is their product where you kind of, listen to stories, like, instead of reading a story, you listen to a story, right? So content can be of different formats. The same content can be used in different packaging and different formats, right? So then the question is, how would you market it? Let's say as an organization, you have certain topic or certain content which you would want to market, right? So how would you market it? Typically is the question, right? The thing to determine would be, what is going to be my marketing objective? And hence I'm talking about, like, how typically a marketing plan is created, right? First, you need to identify, and please note it down, all of you, that what you need to determine, what is my marketing objective. Second is, how do I go about achieving these marketing objectives? Third is, how do I measure success of these marketing objectives, right? Then fourth is, if these marketing objectives are fulfilled, then how is it going to impact sales? How will then sales benefit from my marketing objectives, right? From my marketing activities. Then you have to ask the question, what would I market? While determining the marketing objectives and all the deliverables, etc., are important, then you will need to understand the sixth part is, what will I market? And that is where content marketing comes in. Like, what is the content I would want to market, so that users are able to understand what I'm talking about, what I am marketing, and hence take an action, right? So let me repeat myself, and you can note it down again, because there's going to be a case study based on this as well. So it's very important to understand the concept accordingly. First, what are my marketing objectives? Second, how do I measure my marketing objectives? How do I kind of, go about, like, fulfilling my marketing objectives? Third is, how do I measure my marketing objectives? Fourth is, like, how my marketing activities are going to impact sales, right? And fifth is, then once all these things are determined, what am I marketing? Which is nothing but what content am I marketing, and hence what is content marketing, right? So if this is what the flow is, then let me kind of, share with you something about Accenture. They have in India, and this is about India, Accenture, they have an annual property, right, which they have developed. They call it the Accenture Business Journal. And we all know what journals are. It's nothing but, in the real world, magazines and stuff like that. But in the virtual world, it is like, a accumulation of different content, which becomes a journal, right? They call it the Accenture Business Journal. And if you type in Google at any point in time, Accenture Business Journal for India, right, you will find plenty of content over there, right? And I will also share that, like, link as well in this chat. So let me kind of, do that before I kind of speak. Otherwise, I may forget. So in the chat, I have just shared this, right? So if you search in Google, you will find it, but you can keep this link handy and you can read about it more, right? So what is Accenture Business Journal of India, right? It is nothing but it's an accumulation of various topics, various content in a journal format, so that the industry or the business, if they want to get information about Accenture Business Journal, and also about like the latest trends and topics, etc., they can all come here online and then they can consume the content, right? So let me share my screen and show you how this looks like. So this is the web page which I have already shared with you, right? If you go through, and this was sometimes around 2021 and 2020 when the COVID was happening, and that is the point in time their journal was launched. The 2022 version is still not launched, and I'm sure it will be launched sometime soon. But then this is the 1 year back version, right? So if you browse through, you will see each journal each time will have a certain concept around what it was and what it is, right? So this one, the concept was about outmaneuvering the uncertainty to reinvent your business. Uncertainty, why? Because it was COVID, the business was all uncertain. So how would you typically maneuver that situation and reinvent your business and make that impact to the sales was important, right? So this is what it is. And then if you scroll down further, you will, one, of course, you can see the full journal, what was that entire report. And then if you want to look at like some specific articles in that full journal, so this full journal will have 10 different topics. You can download everything together, or you can go to individually each one of these and read and download as well, right? So everything is available over here. And then you can see the previous year's journals also, like 2019, 2018, what they were. So which means this particular page, right, becomes a accumulation of all the information together, right? So that's my content. So you can see there is plenty of content over here. Like in a one single place, there's plenty of content over here, right? So you have determined what that content is, right? Now, coming to the what would be your marketing objective? What do you typically want users to do when they see the content? The marketing objectives for Accenture was to position themselves as a thought leader in the industry, right? Where on all these topics that is mentioned over here, the industry should understand that Accenture is probably the leader or probably the best when it comes to these topics, right? That was the objective. How would they go about doing that? They would be going about doing that through various marketing activities, right? What are the different marketing activities? If you see here, you have Apple Podcast and Spotify, right? And we are all familiar with this because everybody knows what's an Apple Podcast and a Spotify, right? These are the podcast apps. So the same Accenture Business Journal for India, this entire report, that view journal, what you see here, right? And all the individual, let's say your what you call the articles, you can convert the same text into podcast, into audio, right? That's just the same format that is getting converted into a different thing altogether, right? And then if you host it on Spotify or Apple, then you are giving the users an option to go to these and listen. Not everybody would want to come to the website to read the content, but they can listen, and because different users behave differently, right? Somebody may want to read it on the website, somebody may want to just look at it in an app, somebody may want to listen. So I can convert the same content into a different format and make people listen. So they have a promotional plan for podcasts. That's one. Second, you can use your traditional channels like Google and LinkedIn and Facebook, etc., to drive users to this page, right? Once the users are coming onto the page, there are multiple options they can do. They can either subscribe to these and listen, they can download the report, they can look at the video. This is a YouTube video, right? So that is another form of the content. So this entire page has text, it has podcast, it has a video which is embedded, so you can watch the video on YouTube as well, right? You can share this in your social channels as well, so that it amplifies further, it reaches out to the larger audiences, right? You can go to any one of these and see, like, how you would want to kind of, interact. So for example, if somebody clicks on re-architect your business to output, this will lead the users to this particular page, which is basically the article on one topic. And on this page, again, you can read the full report. You can look at, like, you can download the PDF. You can like, listen to the audiobook. That is nothing but the audio version of it, right? So all of these together, like, becomes my different ways in which I would be marketing, different channels I would be using, and different ways I would be marketing, right? And on the home page, I would be, of course, seeing, like, what my different content are. It could be a video, it could be an audio, it could be text, it could be, like, it could be anything. It could be social, it could be anything, right? And then, of course, like, if anybody at any point in time would want to move back to the previous years of versions, etc., they also have this option, right? So this is how typically a content marketing would be done, right? I'm just giving you up one particular use case. Now, different companies work different in terms of content marketing, but the basis of, like, how typically a content marketing is done is something, and this is a good example which you may want to kind of, remember, because that's going to be helpful, right? Now, I'll also show you how typically it looks and appears on a podcast page. Let's say I'll share my screen. So this is an example of an Apple podcast, right? So if anybody wants to listen the same content on an Apple podcast, this is where they would see, like, listen on Apple podcast, and that is where. So you click on play. Each one of them are, like, 10 minutes or 13 minutes, or, like, you 17 minutes, depending on, like, how the topics are, right? And you have the different other episodes as well, right? So this is how the content is marketed. So keep in mind that, like, when you're talking about marketing, one is content. What are the different content formats? And once the content formats are decided, where all you would market, what are the forms you would use, right? Video or audio or podcast or social or Google or wherever you would use. That is important. And then to answer your question in terms of how, if you're doing this marketing, right, how will it impact sales? How will you measure the success? First is, how will you measure the success, and then how will it impact sales? In this particular case of Accenture Business Journal, the measure of success was reach. How many people did this message reach out to? How many people contacted Accenture? How many people shared it on social, right? How many people engaged? How many people listened to the podcast for the entire 17 minutes? How many people, like, looked at the video for the entire duration, right? So how many people visited the site to kind of, this thing. So these were all the different various measures of success, right? And then how will it impact the sales? So let's say, for example, by doing all of these, the industry is understanding that, yes, there is a company called Accenture who is kind of, sharing this kind of, content, etc., and it is important for our business. Why don't we reach out to them and have a discussion, like, what can they do for our organization? That's the impact, right? And then, like, the sales team of Accenture would be interacting with the different clients, making them understand that, like, what are we talking about here, right? And the clients may say, you know what, okay, we have a problem of digital transformation. We would want to transform our organization into a digitally, like, enabled organization. We would want to adopt cloud. We would want to adopt IoT. We would want to probably, like, build products which are much more digital and cutting edge. How do we do that? Then Accenture sales team will tell them, okay, we have these 5 solutions which we can partner with you and work towards digitally transforming your organization, right? So if you see, then the impact of content, impact of marketing, impact of the channels and the promotion lets the users, like, understand, interact, comes back, and then interaction. So that's how sales and marketing works together as well, right? And that's important. So hence I felt that, like, this would be a very relevant example for you, because like, in the end, whatever technologies you are developing or what or studying or coming up with a particular solution, right, it is very important that, like, you know how to market it Because if you do not market it, people will not know. You may have a brilliant idea, right? But if you don't tell that to the people, or if you don't share that with the people, then you will not, nobody will come to know about your brilliant idea, and a lot of good work and effort will go down the drain, right? So hence marketing is important. If marketing is important, what in marketing is important? That is content marketing is important. And then how do you typically measure success and tie that back to your entire sales cycle? This is how all the organizations they work, right? In an organization, there are sales team, there are marketing team, there are technology teams, there are operations teams, and all those are different functions, right? Now, if you have a certain interest in a particular area in terms of how you would want to develop, right, a solution, then you need to understand the entire 360-degree picture. You need to connect the dots, right? It's not only about preparing a technical solution, but it's also about knowing how to market it. That's important, right? And I will give you a case study after this, like, in this class, like another time we have discussed this. That will be a case study number 3, right? But before that, like, let's hear any questions if you have.
Hello, sir.
Yeah.
This is a basic doubt.
Yeah.
It might seem silly, but like you mentioned, there are different teams in a company for each purpose, like one for the marketing, one for the sales, one for technical. If we are working for only the technical, why should we concentrate on the marketing and sales department?
Yeah.
Why should we have that knowledge?
Yeah. Because while there are different teams, the reason for having different teams are each teams are specialized in some domains and functions. That's why, right? But from a company point of view, it is all one team. From a user point of view, it is one Accenture. It is not a technical Accenture or a marketing Accenture or a, let's say, a sales Accenture, right? Yeah, if I am a user, I am coming to you with a problem, and you as a company, you're going to help solve it for me, right? And if you are to solve it for me, then you need to interact with the different functions within the organization to understand what and how we are going to solve the problem. So you may be a technical person, but if you don't understand the business, then how will you develop the product? That's the first question, right? Because a product is, or a solution is going to be developed only when you know that a client has a certain problem, and this is the solution which I would want to provide. So unless you understand the business part of it, then even as a technologist, you will not be able to develop the product. You will then go about making some product which is random, right? Hence, you are required to understand the entire end-to-end ecosystem, so that, like, teams, and that is exactly also, and a very good question. In reality, a lot of teams struggle exactly to the same question, which, like, you asked, like, why should I learn about this, or why should I not learn about this, right? But the point is, like, if each of you don't understand each other, then it's a problem. Same thing goes for a marketing person also. A marketing person, a marketing, somebody has to go on mute. So yeah, so a marketing person may not be an expert in technology, right? But the marketing and the salesperson needs to understand something of that. Like, say, for example, like, as a marketing person, I would want to go and talk to a client about cloud. I may not be an AWS person, I may not be a Google certified person, and that is fine. But at least I know what is the cloud. That's important. I can't be going to the client and saying, you know what, oh, I'm coming to talk to you about cloud, and I don't know.
This is the mindset. Soumyajit, this is the mindset. I am learning IoT, then you teach only IoT for 4 months. Now, this is what we have to tell them. They are all interconnected technology. In AI also, IoT will be used. Cyber security can be used. So when you go for an interview, I heard yesterday a girl telling that, I'm training IoT. You ask me questions only on IoT. Now, this is something which that mindset has to change. So when experts are teaching, they're teaching anything and everything, and they're only teaching the usage of these 6 courses. So I think you have hit the nail perfectly, that when they go for an interview, they have to learn everything. You cannot tell the interviewer, ask me questions only on IoT, ask me question only on web development. You have to use the application part of it. I think it's perfectly. I hope they understand this, the student understand this. Because I think they're not understanding. Yesterday, I was going to a session of Anil Era for interview sessions. You'll be surprised. Students are telling, sir, we're doing AI with Python. Oh my God. AI with Python, there are a lot of things which is being used in AI, which is leading to web development, which is leading to IoT, which is leading to cloud computing. Now, so this is something I think, anyway, I'm talking to them today, but I think, Soumyajit, if you people also try telling them, no, that when it comes to learning a subject, it has to be an overall factor when it comes to interview. Interviewer will not ask you questions specific. He can ask you questions from anywhere. So I think if that you throw a light, no, like you said, that marketability. Marketability is a must. See, all said and done, whether you are a technocrat or whether you are a non-technocrat, Soumyajit, we all started with marketing, right?
Yeah.
In our life. And even today, although we are in a technical space, but without marketing, we will not survive anywhere. What do you think? Ultimately, it boils down to that. So this importance has to be given. You'll be surprised. Couple of students tell me, sir, I will not do marketing job. Oh my God. Everything boils down there. After your marketing job, you'll use your technical knowledge and try to sell the product through your technical knowledge into marketing. So I think these are some of the ideas. If you expert give them, because I tell them, but if you experts also tell them, it will, refurbish their mindset, which is not in the right direction. So over to you. You hit the perfect point. I'm in agreement with you. Everything must have a marketability value. That is what you have hit it, and I think students must understand this. So when your evaluation happen, no, Soumyajit, today, when your evaluation today or whenever within this month for the star of the month, kindly give more importance to whatever they give from a marketability point of view. I think that will help them to think about it. Thank you, Soumyajit. Carry on. Sorry, I came.
No, thank you, sir. Thank you. These are very important inputs as well. And I think the question that Srishti Infotech asked is where we started this conversation. So that's important. So yes, so coming back to what I was saying is for example, me first, if I take my own personal example, I'm not a technologist, right? But if I am able to talk to somebody about cloud, but cloud is a technology, I may not get into the inside information about how a server is set up, what is a TCM model and all those kind of various etc. But at least I know I can go and talk saying that, what, if this is cloud, this is how you should be trying to solve the problem for the customer, right? That's important. So and you may be a technologist, you may be an expert, if I come and tell you, you're yes, I can build this for you, great. That is how marketing, sales and technology teams, they work together. But as sir mentioned, and it is not only during the interview. See, interview is one part of it where it's an entry to an organization, right? I mean, and in your life, you will have multiple interviews. It's not just one and then you are kind of done with. Interview is an entry. Interview will give you a platform to enter an organization. But once you enter the organization, how do you survive there? How do you do things which takes your career up? That is important, right? So over there, you may be a brilliant, in certain areas, but if you don't understand the entire business part of it, then you also will not understand how to apply. Hence, it is important that all these things are connected. And by the way, let me tell you, this is not a silly question at all. You said, start by saying that, I'm asking a silly question. This is probably not a silly question at all. This is one of the most important and good questions, I would say, right? Because we all need to understand end to end, not just the one picture. But yes, you be a specialized in something. That is true. Not everybody can be specialized in everything. So you can be a specialized in one thing, but you need to understand the full picture. And understand that full picture is important, because if you don't, you will not make a breakthrough, right? Either interview or otherwise, anything, right? So that's what I wanted to kind of drive, and that's what I wanted to share. So thanks for asking the question.
I got your point. Like, if we don't know how many points are there, we cannot connect the dots. We should know how many dots are there in a company. Then only we can connect those.
Yeah.
We should have a basic knowledge about all the aspects of it.
Yes. And always feel free to ask questions by walking up to the specific team and asking, what, I'm a technologist, I'm building this, but what am I building this for? What will ultimately help the client for? The moment you start getting into this, right, you will start getting the business context for it. Yes. That's important.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. More questions? Okay. If not more questions, then let me give you the case study number 3. right? Note it down, and I will also like mention in the chat group as well, right? Case study number 3 would be pick up any industry, any, right? And try to identify a solution that, trying to identify a problem which you would want to solve for, let's say. Let me rephrase the sentence. Pick up any industry and try to identify a problem which you would want to solve. How would you, through content marketing, very specifically, how would you, through content marketing, help solve that problem? What are the topics and the content you will have? What are the different forms in which you will market the content? How will you measure success? So let me put it down in the chat here. Project number 3. Choose an industry of your choice. Identify a problem that the industry is facing, and what solution will you provide them with to help them solve the problem? How, through content marketing, you will market and promote your solution? What are the various content formats, channels, etc. you will be using to market this? How will you measure success? Yeah, clear? I hope the students and the L2s and the faculties are all copying this down, because it is important that we get it right. All the 3 projects and all the 3 questions. It is all there in the chat. So please note it down, please copy it down, because the groups have to work accordingly. Okay, all right. Okay. Any other questions on these questions or projects, or how would you want to do, etc.? Anything? Like, there are 3 projects. So in the next month, what we would do is we will start discussing these projects. We will start having interactions around these, right? And that is how the classes are going to be. So you would be talking more and presenting than me, I'm talking more. So it's going to be the other way around, right? So it's very, very important that everybody gets these questions. There are 3 projects. So we should have enough time next month, each one of the classes, to really talk about more and more of these, right? So I think that's the format that is going to be from the next month onwards. So hence, I'm requesting all the faculties and L2s and all the coordinators here and the students to please keep this in mind, because this is going to be the format of interaction from next month onwards, right? So these projects are important. So hence, please note it down and start working on them one by one. Any other questions?
Sir, like you provided one case study for the content marketing. Can you provide us with another example, sir? Similar.
Okay.
For me to understand.
Okay. So while I talked about Accenture, right, as an example of content marketing, you can look at, let's say, any industry, to be very honest, right? You can look at, let's say, a Flipkart, or you can look at, let's say, an Amazon, or you can look at an IBM. Actually, I leave it to you to do the research, because you will also realize that different companies are marketing content in very different ways, right? I don't want to have only one particular way of thinking. I want you to have a broader one, but you can actually do a research and see how they're doing it. For example, somebody like a Flipkart would be having a big billion day. Amazon will have, let's say, for example, a Prime Day. So during the Prime Day, how would they typically market a content, or what would Flipkart do during a big billion day? Where all they would be marketing the content, television, or your digital, or your apps, or or event, or virtual, whatever they are, right? Similarly with Amazon's of the world as well, right? Newer forms of content, for example, OTT, the Netflixes of the world, right? How are they marketing content? Then if you are an user, and if you are logging into, let's say, for example, you have an Amazon Fire Stick. If you are logging in with the Fire Stick, you have an all possible different digital apps available over there, right? How can somebody map a content over there, or do a content marketing over there? So for example, a lot of times I see a Samsung advertising when I log in, or I see a new car, Volkswagen, which is launching, advertising over them, right? So that is nothing but marketing of my content using different new channels. That is a channel like an OTT, right? Which is a digital television kind of a thing, right? So hence, if you see, it's possible across all. So I just give you a few examples, but when you do your research and when you work on the project, think through how innovative can you be. And again, when you're working on the projects, and this is for all the teams, don't think if something is right or wrong. I'm not going to be evaluating at all with something what is right or wrong. Do not have it in your mind whether you're doing right or you're wrong. All that you need to have in your mind is what are you doing? How are you being more creative? It's a free hand given to you, right? So hence try to think on those lines, and then come up with the projects.
Thank you, sir.
Yep. Okay. All right. Great. So thank you so much. I think we are up on time. So thank you very much. We'll see again. We'll meet again in the next month, because today obviously is the almost the last class of the month today. Yeah, please start thinking and starting working on these presentations. We will start having these from the middle of next month. So you have at least at least 2 to 3 weeks from now, and you have enough time to prepare, right? So yeah, so, and in the meanwhile, if you have any questions, etc., please ask your L2s or anybody to reach out, and we can always clarify more. But then these are the 3 projects which you will have to all work on in a very similar format in the way you presented the previous ones, and we would want to see the improvement and the process that is going further from here, right? All the centers, that's important, right?
Sir,
all right then, thank you all.
Sir,
yeah,
there was one question. Can I go?
Sure. Yeah, sure. Yeah.
So it's about VR and VR events. Based on that, sir, like you told us about the VR and VR virtual events.
Yes.
So while attending these sessions, a user may get a bug or it's a glitch. If they found that, like they are walking in at the event and there's something glitch or there is something bug, it will be like the user experience is completely, it's gone. So
Yes.
it's not the best experience for them.
Yes.
So are these companies like On24 or other platforms, are they at the level where they have achieved this?
Yes.
They have solved these problems.
Yes.
Are they at this level?
Yes, they are at this level, and hence they are the best in the world.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Thank you so much. Have a good
Thank
rest
you,
of the day.
sir.
Yeah. Thank you.
So can we should do different projects, or can we collaborate all 3 projects?
There are 3 projects, so
Yes,
all 3 has to be done.
Sir, differently, or can we collaborate all
differently?
Okay,
Each
sir.
3 means 1, 2, 3. 3 different projects, not same.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.